Hey everybody, welcome back to another one of our world building bonus episodes, talking about our custom D&D setting of Valana. I'm joined once again by Eden.
Hello, hello.
How's it going?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad.
Awesome.
Yourself? You good?
Yeah, not too bad. Same old. As you know, deep in my editing production work of an upcoming thing that we've kind of announced, but sort of our upcoming Star Trek series and that, and
people with fingers on the pulse have heard things about this already.
Yes.
There will be enough of those that are not paying attention.
I feel like there's going to be like a big announcement, like drop thing at some point. Maybe actually in a couple of weeks when we have our, the 4th year anniversary.
Oh, yeah, it's not far away.
That might be a time. Maybe I'll finally put that video trailer live. Keep an eye on your feeds, people. There's some news coming your way.
Indeed.
But today we are doing another one of our world building episodes. This time around, we're going to be discussing a small island chain that is part of our kind of main country setting. Just off the northeast coast of the livable part of Valana, is an island chain called the Amethyst Isles. And as it stands, we haven't got a lot kind of set in stone about them. I have a couple of little town names. I have a sort of ruined location on there, and I've got a little bit of a sort of historical event back in the midst of time. I think we've actually maybe talked about before on one of these.
I think we talked in broad strokes about the idea that maybe the Isles had been kind of broken away from the mainland, that this was part of the mages of the past, the powerful mages and their excess power running into the country and ruining places, and that maybe these islands were shattered off of the mainland. Yeah,
these were once just a sort of another kind of peninsula, and now it's just, completely sort of shattered and not floating, but a good amount of it sunk below the sea as a result of a giant magical kind of, in my head, kind of like a beam weapon. But I think I'd maybe been watching a little bit too much kind of ridiculous Gundam anime stuff at that point.
Hey, big laser beams are undeniable. I think we talked about the idea of somebody standing at the top of a tower and just launching off a massive bolt of like magical energy. So yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, let's maybe like do a recap of that, and maybe we can adjust that story a little bit then. So we'll start with that. So my idea was then, like I say, back in we're currently in the Age of Unification, as we sort of re-established in our last one, where we were sort of we reintroduced the setting. In the previous age, the Age of Arcane Might, there was a lot of wizards up to some bullshit, essentially.
Yeah, playing with powers beyond the ken of mortal man.
There was a lot of like magical kind of like wizard-led little fiefdoms. They're all kings of their own little kingdom, vying to be the most powerful and everything. So I would imagine sort of, I mean, we haven't set much of this like in stone at all. We've just kind of vaguely alluded to it by and large, other than a couple of events, this being one of them. I'm kind of imagining that there's sort of a variety of kind of little magical kingdoms everywhere, sort of led by sort of cabals of powerful wizards, or some of them just like fully just one guy who's holding it together by his own like sort of power and that. And there's a lot of rivalry between them as they're sort of vying for, well, the usual things that kingdoms vie for, land and things, but also kind of powerful magical relics, and there's just general pettiness of wizards being like, no, fuck you, Balthazar. We're at war now.
Conjuration is useless. Yeah. Conjuration is the way.
Yeah,
you can have battles between rival schools, as it were.
There's thousands of their peasant people dying over small arguments.
Maybe this is a step too far, but I kind of like the idea of it being that idea of rival schools, that almost in the way of like Chinese martial arts, you've got crane style versus snake style or something. It's like this school's style versus that school's style, and these mages lean towards that style of magic, and those mages do that completely the opposite, and never the two shall meet apart from on the battlefield. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a maybe, I guess. Yeah, but in D&D terms, I mean, it's going to be a case of pretty much everyone's going to get destroyed by like evocation magic, because the one group who use like offensive spells, there's just the divination people in the corner like, oh, I hope they don't notice us. Like,
Why Prance likes fire.
Yeah.
He knows.
Yeah, no, I do like that idea. But, well, maybe it's not so much like schools of magic so much as literal schools of magic.
Yeah, that's probably more along the right line of where it would just be that maybe they would favor certain spells or something. There's no drawing a line on like we will never do that particular type of magic, but it's more like some of these spells go really well together as far as we're concerned. Maybe they could teach ways of combining things from different schools to meet better ends, as it were, from the result of their magics.
Even if it's just like a matter of philosophy, so it's like this wizard and his students believe one thing, and another wizard and his students believe another thing, and there's just long-standing rivalries that have, over the course of hundreds of years, evolved into people blowing up mountains and things.
Fire is the most destructive. No, lightning is the most destructive.
Yeah. So anyway, which is a long way around of saying then. So the event that we have, which formed the Amethyst Isles, in mind I've had, is that one nation of wizards was at war with another nation of wizards who lived on what is now the northernmost part of the Amethyst Isles, but at the time that was connected to the mainland, and their solution to winning the war was to build this huge kind of tower. I guess we could say this is probably before the Auric Wastes were built. Well, not built, were formed.
But when the lands that were before the Auric Wastes were obliterated and became the Wastes.
Yeah, at that time it was, just regular lands. So they built this tower in their territory. In my head, I've got it that they kind of sort of perform this. There's a lot of rituals on towers, I realized in my historical events, but they kind of almost like burned out all of their kind of. Maybe the guy who was in charge burned out all of his acolytes to, perform this kind of one final attack designed to completely destroy the people of the peninsula.
Yeah, I like it because, especially, you say in an almost withering way that there's a lot of things taken in place in towers, but towers work well as focal points of power in terms of like the man at the top of the spire. Yeah, if you've got that concept of if he's going to sacrifice his charges, as it were, for the sake of casting this spell, that maybe there's particular places within the building that they have to line themselves up in to prepare for this, that like they have to link hands across the floors, and that like I could imagine the visual to go with this would be like almost a light coming from the bottom of the tower as people's bodies just burst into arcane flame, and it sort of goes up the tower and then blasts out of the main mage's hand or something to destroy everything in front of him.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm thinking. Like he's on the pinnacle, like being the focus of all this power. And essentially the ritual does work, but because we like irony here, it also kills him. And it essentially carves out this huge sort of cone-shaped kind of trench in the landscape, pointing from the tower sort of northwards towards this peninsula, which is, we've now got a whole sort of rift there, sort of mountains thrown up by this kind of carving force. When it hits the peninsula, it doesn't fully destroy it. A lot of it's kind of obliterated, but it's sort of what's left is sort of now a series of islands. So yeah, it was successful. I think we could probably. We don't need to go into full details here of how it kind of shook out or anything, but suffice to say, maybe this was the thing that destroyed both of the groups. It's almost like he went so far in his quest to get rid of them that it was resulted in a stalemate of sorts. Yes, he ruined their land, but all of his acolytes and he was gone by the time he was finished. So what was it worth? Maybe he overestimated his own power to survive the ritual, sort of thing.
Or maybe he just got a few too many acolytes. I knew I shouldn't have put that last 20 in there.
Those, I like that idea. Like, I built one floor too many on this tower.
Yeah, you can just feel it as it's coming up through his feet. Like, oh dear, this is more charged than I thought it was going to be. Oh dear.
Yeah,
coming up through his bones and like charring him from the inside. Is like, well, I guess I'll just blast it off because I don't have a choice. Maybe in his own mind, he was like, well, this wasn't the way I planned, but I know that they're going down from this. They've got to go down from this.
Yeah. So essentially, this attack has carved out this huge rift valley, which is kind of on the sort of north. It's now on the kind of northeastern extreme of the sort of livable lands of Valana, and left this island chain of the remains of this peninsula. The one other, I think, ruin that I've got on there, which in my head is related to this attack, was the capital of the target of the that, which is on the northern coast of the main island there, which I've just basically called it the Ruins of Solara. I think I pulled Solara out of nowhere, but I'm fairly sure that's pretty close to an ice cream name. What was that ice cream?
It's Solaro.
Solaro.
Yeah. Close. It's pretty close. I think of Solaris more.
Yeah,
immediately.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, but either way, though, I've called it that, and we're keeping it as that because whatever. There's nothing else called that in our setting.
It works.
So yeah, in my head, it was like this was their stronghold, and they just kind of they had a whisper of the incoming sort of. They knew this was going to happen, sort of thing. They knew there was an attack. They couldn't do anything about the attack, but they were able to put up like a kind of last ditch. Everybody puts up like an energy shield type thing around the city. It was still ruined and everything, just because the sheer power of the attack. It split off a peninsula of land, but the city was kind of buried under all this kind of. I guess we could. In my head, I'm thinking that like a lot of like the rock was like turned to molten rock and everything. So then the city was kind of encased in this sort of shell of rock as they're kind of keeping their shield in place, and then they all can't get out, so they're just sort of stuck there. And that was the end of the city.
Yeah,
really.
I like that. And then I suppose when the shields come down, there's just like a wall of cooling magma of sorts that's kind of been halted there, perhaps.
Yeah, so they're kind of
devastation.
They're kind of in this bubble, sort of underground. Are
they still there? What do you think? This could be something to leave for.
We'll leave that hanging
up in the air, but yeah. Maybe they could still be there.
I like the idea, though, that the only reason, it's on the map because people know there's a ruin there, but the only reason they know there's a ruin there is because there's like the tops of towers sticking out of the rock face. Mm-hmm. That's all people can see, but really underground is this whole sort of, well, I say city, but sort of, I'm thinking in my head, it's not huge. It's like, it's kind of like a stronghold kind of town sort of thing size, really, rather than like a full city, but it's sort of...
But still, it would be enough that if you found the right breakage to find your way under the dome, as it were, that it would be a bit of a shocker to be like, okay, so all those ruins that we thought were just sort of sticking out of the ground itself, well, the ground is actually another 50 feet below us.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I've got in mind for that. Other than that, though... all we've got of this island chain is two town names, Stormhaven on the kind of sheltered inner bay of the main island, and Storm's Way kind of right next to these ruins, kind of up on the top, sort of a little bit kind of exposed into the sea there. And I put another dot on one of the other islands that I did not name a town there. That's pretty much all we've got at the moment. Yeah.
Well, my first thought, just to get the ball rolling, they're called the Amethyst Isles.
Yes.
Are there a great many amethyst here, would you say?
I think this was, again, another thing I kind of had in mind as like a result of this attack, is that the whole land as it was shattered was kind of absorbed a lot of the magical energy of this attack, which was, I guess, purple.
It would have to be if they're amethyst.
Yeah. But as a result, there's like a greater than normal amount of kind of gemstones are found on these islands, which is kind of what their sort of the draw is of the place, really. And a lot of them are amethyst. And the sort of the land is not like as fully like magically scarred as the wastes are, but the land is kind of got this sort of slight infusion of magic, and it's not in a mutating way to the people who live there or anything like it would be in the wastes, but it's just a sort of it's a slightly magical place kind of thing.
Along those lines, then,
I think I made an animal as part of a World Anvil challenge a type of cat that's from there called an amethyst cat. Let me just
I
find.
vaguely remember that.
It's somewhere in the archive somewhere. Hang on, where's domesticated creatures, pets, and familiars? Amethyst cat. Red. Yeah, okay. Here's what I wrote. When did I write this? Long time ago. A rare exotic breed of cat found only in the northern Amethyst Isles. Prizes are familiar by magical practitioners. Because the cats themselves carry a faint magical field around them at all times, and they've got purple coats. So, yeah. That was me trying to say, hey, it's a magic cat.
You told me that there are purple cats in this universe now.
There's purple cats.
Franz, someday when we get him out of that thing, that is now on the agenda of like, Franz must own a purple cat.
That's just left number one on your priority list. Well, no, number one, get out of the time bubble. Number two, get a cat.
Purple cat, specifically a purple cat to go with the robes.
You got to colour coordinate your pets, people.
Damn straight. Franz has got some kind of weird sense of style going on underneath the madness and the senility or whatever the hell's going on there.
You don't see a mirror very often, but when you do, you accessorize appropriately.
Yeah, totally. Well, just off the back of my question then, relating to the amethysts and what have you, let me run this past you as an idea. So, one of the islands, let's say maybe one of the more isolated ones, and it could possibly be because of this that it's isolated, maybe could have amethyst golems.
Okay.
Amethysts that have absorbed so much power and have been left, like perhaps this island has truly been deserted for a long time, that compared to some of the others where amethysts are collected on the regular for magical purposes, this is the one where it's like, we don't go to that island. Like that's the one where the amethysts came to life, and you never know when you might be tapping away on one, and all of a sudden the whole wall in front of you moves, and guess what?
Jerry the prospector went there, and he never came back.
Yeah, and that maybe you could have it where there's this idea, maybe it's the potential in terms of like using it as a setting for something, but you could have it where somebody gets the idea that, well, those must be even more powerful like gems, that maybe it's worth hunting one of these golems or something like that. That could be a reason for somebody to go to that place. But what do you think?
The locals are all like, we don't go there, that island is cursed. I don't know why they talk like that, because the
rocks themselves have come to life.
And not in the normal way the rocks come to life. These ones are real assholes about it.
They won't even try to talk. You can't be diplomatic with them in the slightest.
Offered him a sandwich and he broke my arm off. See?
I just like the idea, the visual in particular.
I like that.
Especially the idea of them being very pure crystals. That these are like basically transparent to the point where like they are very clean, as it were, and that like these giant crystal golems would look like shiny, massive, transparent. I don't know.
I can't help but think of again, it always comes back to Discworld, but how the trolls are like slow thinking and that until they get cold, but then there's that one troll who's basically pure diamond, and he's super fast thinking and everything because he's a diamond and that.
And it could be that like the magical forces have purified the amethysts or something, and that's why they've become imbued with spirit, because anything that is sort of so pure would become imbued in D&D land eventually, just by virtue of being around.
Yeah, it's
in general terms, it's got its potential, as it were.
Yeah, what's that? I've got an image in my head, and I can't. I think there was there some kind of DLC character in the first Dragon Age that was kind of like that?
Yes, Shale.
That was it. Yeah,
Shale
not fully,
was It was the concept for Shale, if memory serves, was that it was a dwarven spirit that got put inside of a golem, and to begin with, Shale is very aggressive, and you can't talk to him. And if you eventually get information out of him, it turns out it was a female dwarf, still considers themselves very feminine, and is just stuck in this body. And eventually it's got that kind of thing where you can either turn them into a weapon and treat them like they're a machine, or treat them nice and humanize them before the end of the game. And I think the best ending for Shale is that you basically kill them, if memory serves.
Right. I don't remember finishing that storyline, is the thing. I just got an image. I just remember the mission where you come to get them.
Yeah, no, I played Dragon Age to death multiple times. So yeah, Shale was one of my favorite bits. It's like, Shale made the deep roads actually feel like he wanted to be there because Shale had things to say about it. But
I don't think I finished the first Dragon Age.
It's long.
Yeah.
It's hard work by today's standards, I think. But
I think
it's especially easily broken, in fairness. Like, there are some very easy ways. Like, if you get oil and fire as two of your magics, guess what? Every NPC in the game is just easy pickings because you cast oil on them, they fall on the floor, and then you set the oil on fire. And it's that easy.
I think I came to it, like, not directly, but very soon after Mass Effect. And I was kind of like, I'm kind of bouncing off, like, not storyline wise and everything, but I think just the inventory system and everything, I kind of bounced off a little bit.
It was much more old school.
Yeah,
like Dragon Age is the last of the kind of. It felt like a extension of Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah.
Like, it had that old D&D feeling to it of, like, the numbers are crunchy. and it's easy to skank certain things and do dirty tactics, but at the same time you can get instantly ganked out of nowhere.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think I just came to it at the wrong time, but I do remember playing that for at least the mission where you get Shale. So it was along with that, to get back round to the Amethyst Golems. I do like that as a concept.
One last video game reference before we move off that, potentially. My mind is going to Dark Souls. There are, I can't remember which Dark Souls it is, but there are big blue crystalline enemies that are quite hulking, and they got big spiky hands, and they do lumbering slow attacks at you. But I've got a vision of, like, a more noble version of that, as it were. Okay. Like, it's completely transparent. It's certainly not quite built like it's a hulking thing. It would be more like, not necessarily slender, but something that's more tall and an elegant construct rather than a big bag of lumps that is now moving.
Yeah, I mean, that's good that you said that, because I was imagining a bag of lumps.
I think it would be more interesting that, like, because of the refined nature of, like, it's been affected by magic for a long time, like I say, it's perhaps been purified by the conditions that it's in and then imbued with life, that it should look like it's gone through that. Like, a normal rock looks like, crappy old rock, but this is magic rock. This has been smoothed and polished to a fine sheen, kind of thing.
What if they formed underwater, so they had to be smooth to effectively move through? Like, the cavern that they formed in was flooded, so essentially they've sort of manifested with more of, like, a swimmer's sort of feel to them than like a hulking sort of, like, me golem, me smash, me big bubbly rock guy. They're more sort of like, I don't know, smooth moving, and yeah, in that way where, if, like, you've seen a brick that's been under the ocean for a little while, that they come out with completely rounded off edges and look very smooth by comparison. I could see it on that line. And on that front, that idea of there perhaps being an underwater cave where this is where they're coming from. It could be that, there's one of the islands that cave is on. Nobody knows quite where it is as a result. And every now and again, one of these golems just walks out of the water onto land. And everybody's like, oh, fuck, it's happening again. It's one of the big magical golem things. Everybody run for the hills, call the wizards. But they're quite inscrutable and everything. And, like, they don't seem to have any... They're not just turning up to smash things.
Yeah, they're just wandering around, and if you get in their way, maybe they will just, like, they would cast their arm towards you or something, and it's like, we saw that happen once. You don't get in that thing's way. We see what happens.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but like I say, I mean, so the actual kind of, I was definitely thinking that the rounded off, like, smooth things, like you find there's, like you say, glass and things that's kind of been smoothed down completely through erosion in the sea and stuff. But then also, because they're, they have a motion to them, but they've got kind of a body sort of shape and feel that is kind of more sort of dynamic and kind of built for swimming, essentially, where you need to be sort of aerodynamic's the wrong word for swimming. I'm trying to think of the right word, but you know what I mean. Sort of,
they'd have kind of like cutting, not cutting fins, but like they would perhaps the front of the body would have like aerodynamic kind of shapes. Let's say not aerodynamic, but hydrodynamic.
Yeah, that was I was trying to. Yeah, that was exactly.
Maybe the front of like the chest section would come up towards a point in the middle, so that water would move around it, and that as it walks through the water, it's cutting through it, so that it's a little bit less resistance from rock basically trying to move through water, which would be a bit of an arduous process.
But where they're not actually water breathers, they are still they've kind of like an odd mixture because they still have the ability to go on land, so they have got legs and that. But it's I don't know. I'm kind of thinking of hang on, let me Google the image. Did you see the Day the Earth Stood Still remake with Keanu Reeves?
Oh, I did watch it once, but my memory of that is very fuzzy. Because
I was thinking it was more smooth than that.
Hard for me.
It's just it's just a dude. Okay, it's just a silver dude. I was thinking of.
Are we talking about the robot from that?
I was, and I was thinking, but like I was thinking more smooth, kind of weirdly proportioned, kind of sort of flipper limbs thing. Not flipper, you know what I mean? Yeah, I've got
stronger memories of the original Day the Earth Stood Still than that version of it, quite frankly.
I don't know why that was my go-to for that, really, because I've got it on Blu-ray, but I watched it once because I got it in like pre-owned for like £3, and I was like, oh, Keanu Reeves, and then I don't remember it being particularly great. But
he's just bland. It's one of those ones where Keanu's lack of personality, which was an intentional thing with the character that they were having in play, was sort of like, sorry, but we need somebody with personality to bounce off of. But you've banked on one big star and it ain't working.
But anyway, yes, a long way around to say that. Yeah, I like the concept of the Amethyst Golems and that, and then being a little bit almost like a kind of slightly sort of alien force that just appears sometimes, and they have their own motives. And if people get in their way, people get knocked aside with fatal consequences. But
I'm very stuck on the idea that they certainly look otherworldly, and they certainly don't look like golems in the way that other people understand them to look like. So then you wouldn't, I mean, like the average mage wouldn't look at it and go golem immediately. So they would look at it and go, that moves like a golem, but it's made out of rocks, but it doesn't look like any I've ever seen.
So that's maybe why people have sort of not really identified what their deal is, because they're looking at them, they're not thinking golem, they're thinking, what the hell is that? You know? Because maybe there is like even like, you know, mages or whoever who's come to investigate is not looking at it thinking golem. They're looking at it and going, well, you know, because golems they've seen are sort of flesh golems are weird kind of undead things. Other ones are kind of rock creatures. This is like a smooth, lithe, tall, like out of the ocean kind of thing. What is this? You know. The only thing that we've got to really go on here is that it doesn't communicate. It's not communicating very much, and it's very smooth, and it's also kind of amethysty like a lot of the rocks around here.
Yeah. I'm just double checking something because I'm not like quite as au fait with a lot of the rules as you are, and I was just checking up on the concept of wild magic. That like perhaps it could be that like the amount of magical force that was put into the area has effectively meant that certain places are permeated with wild magic.
Well, that's the concept. I mean, I'm not basing that on any rules or anything. That's just kind of the concept in my head. Is that that's the concept in general that we've got behind the auric waste, is that the whole place is just infused with like wild magic, and you know that's why things get mutated and weird, and why there's danger in traveling in it. So this is to a lesser extent what's happened to the Isles here, except it's a bit more stable here. So it's at the time
pockets of it, perhaps,
when it first happened. You know, when the magical attack shattered the landscape, and you know there's molten rock flowing and everything, things were a bit more changeable then. But it's sort of settled down now to this, just having a sort of, the land has a sort of low level kind of infusion, which maybe just means that there's this, you know, sort of, you know, it's livable, is what I'm saying. There's no longer kind of like so many places where, well, you don't want to go in there, you'll walk out as a frogman or something, you know. But it's more that like, oh, this is a magical place as a result of it. You know, at the time it was probably horrible. You know, there's, you know, land falling beneath the ocean, there's molten things, there's all this, you know, and everything. You know, it was very much like an apocalyptic event. I mean,
yeah, you turn a corner and you don't know whether things are on fire or if they're covered in ice.
Yeah, I mean,
they might be fluctuating between the two states rapidly.
Let me just count the squares on the map here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So probably a little bit more into the sea, and then about 8 across. So 15 by 8.
Large area.
It is a large area. each is 10 miles, so 150 miles by 80 miles across, was devastated by this one attack. So there's a lot of magical energy going into there. 150 mile cone, like what the hell,
Might be getting too specific here, but what do you think in terms of because viewing magic as this sort of like elemental force as it is within this universe, does it operate insofar as like currents and channels? How does it dissipate? Would it collect potentially that maybe this cave full of golems has come to be because the magical channels, as it were, just about everything that was there has ended up being deposited in basically one place, because where else is it going to go? It's almost like it's not a vortex, but it's just that this is the way that the wind blows. It happens to blow in this direction. That's where it all went. And that under the water, that's where it's not necessarily still full of magic, as it were. Like, as you say, it's been a long time and it's perhaps time for it to have dissipated, or perhaps simply have imbued a lot of different amethysts with this animus. And that's effectively where the magic is now stored, is that within the rocks themselves. That's where a lot of the wild magic ended up, and that's why they're just wandering about aimlessly, because it is wild magic. Nobody created the golem with any intent, so all it can do is wander around pointlessly and kind of react to what's in front of it.
Yeah, it just kind of manifested itself due to the kind of concentration. Yeah, I know. I like. I think there is the kind of idea of like ley lines are a real thing in this and that and everything, and magic does kind of flow, and it's a bit it's pretty unpredictable and everything, but it does have kind of flows and sort of places that are more more susceptible to being kind of nexuses for magical effects and things like that, and there's definitely places where for one reason or another, like the sort of veil between planes like is thin, so if you're not careful you can step through and suddenly you're no longer in the material plane, you're somewhere else, sort of thing.
That's the basis for Planescape Torment.
Yeah but I mean that's just it's just a general kind of D&D concept. It's the planes and that. So yeah, I mean it's I can see that being a thing. Maybe not where all of the energy went, because I imagine
a decent chunk of it though.
Yeah, or it was just kind of flowing through, and this chamber just happened to be a bit of a kind of confluence, and that. So maybe it wasn't even staying here. It was just there was a lot of energy flowing through all the time, and that and everything.
It was something where it's like maybe that was the amethyst mine that was there on that continent, and that when the magic flowed through the place, that's where most of it went, because that's where a lot of stones were already.
Yeah, when the peninsula was shattered, this bit ended up kind of underwater. But there was already this. Maybe it was already like it, but even before everything got kind of souped up by this magical sort of blast. This was like a natural confluence.
Yeah, so, and it was relatively small, but now there's lots of pockets like it. Whereas that one that was already like it is now this. Not necessarily a golem factory, but you know what I mean. Like it's the place where things went a step further.
Yeah. I can get on board with that. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. So stepping away from the magical side of things a little bit here, then. So where we're at now, I mean, I haven't set a date. I don't think for. Oh, apparently I did. Because I just clicked on the tower. The tower I've got it's been basically. It's been about 2,700 years, so 2,700 years since this occurred. Okay, so yeah, this was early on. That does still track. Okay, just because I remember we put in the meteor strike and things, and which was before when the wastes were formed. So this actually happened about 200 years into the Age of Arcane Might, about 500 years before the wastes were formed. That still works out timeline wise. So this was an early big thing in the that happened in the Age of Arcane Might, really. But my point I was going for was that it's been quite a long time, and things have sort of stabilized now, and the Isles essentially now the vibe is a bit chill.
Yeah,
I was kind of in my head. I've got a kind of like Orkney, Shetland Isles sort of idea, because they're kind of out into the sea, and yeah, we're we are north of the equator with the whole setting. So the further north we're going, the more, windswept and things they are. I haven't got my world map to hand, the one we were talking about in the last episode. But we're kind of at a similar latitude here, I think, to where Britain is on Earth. So yeah, that kind of tracks in my head, at least, for sort of what the general kind of climate and sort of things are like there. I think, going to go in and edit my map at some point, so don't fully rely on the layout of things here, because this was something I've been meaning to go, because it does look a little bit dodgy around the bottom area of it. The main island, maybe I'll keep as it is.
I think Storm's Way and Stormhaven make sense, especially their names, where Storm's Way is out on this kind of upper tip, where it's going to be bashed by waves and weather from all directions, just about, apart from the south almost. And Stormhaven almost has kind of like a little kind of, it looks like maybe it could be a cove of sorts, or within a cove. Yeah. And the area south of it is kind of like enclosed a bit. It's a bay of sorts. It's within this little group of islands.
For sure, yeah. I mean, the each square on my map is 10 miles on each side. So, yeah, that's not a huge area. So it is a bit more enclosed than that, So in general, I've kind of got an idea that there's not a huge population in these isles. There's maybe a few people, the larger settlements are going to be Stormhaven and Storm's Way there, but they're on the main island kind of thing.
Yeah.
Every island's probably got one or two people, not more than one or two people. They've got a couple of small little villages and things on them, or whatever. Of varying sizes. Some of them might just be like, hey, there's a little fishing village there that 40 people live in, or something.
Yeah, it makes sense for there to be a lot of small communities based around fishing, because they're surrounded by water on all sides, so yeah.
Yeah, but even the biggest settlements like Stormhaven, they're not... Stormhaven is the biggest one, and it's not going to have a huge amount of people in it. It's the biggest one in the Isles. It's probably... It's nowhere near as big as the any of the larger ones on the mainland kind of thing.
Would it be perhaps the only place on that island where there's an inn or any sense of like the structured civilization of the mainland?
I feel like there'd be more than one inn. Like there's probably an inn, little villages. There's always a pub,
suppose,
kind of thing. But I feel that might be like the administrative sort of. Like that's where the mayor of the islands lives, or something.
Yeah, perhaps that's where there's the magistrates, and there might be a single garrison there. Perhaps. Yeah,
there's a fort there. There might be sort of watchtowers on other places, but this is the main kind of. This is the main hub for the island, basically.
I can imagine it would be a threat on the mainland of like, oh, you better watch yourself, boy, or you're going to get sent out to Storm's Way to stand out on
wants to be
stand out on the edge. Yeah, you've got to stand out on the edge and keep watch. There's always got to be eyes out at Storm's Way.
Yeah, you got to watch out for sea creatures and things, and it's a pretty terrible posting, really. You're essentially going and standing in a lighthouse for a year.
Nothing much has happened there for a long time, but it's just. Within the army or within the armed forces, there would probably be like, it's kept for this purpose. That once upon a time, there was a reason for people to be out there, and it was still a crap job at the time. But now it's just a crap job.
Well, we talked previously about there being raiders coming from Arcturime in the north, so maybe it's a holdover from that. They still have the garrison there. Like, it's been a long time since we've had anybody, crossing the ocean to come and raid. But like at a certain point, there was a bigger problem. So there are these there's a few abandoned forts on like the north, I guess the western side of that island, and that just keeping an eye out. I mean, you've been around this area. I mean, there's quite a few sort of abandoned sort of watch posts and things left over from the Second World War, just on the coastline around where we are, sort of thing. Up in like Studland and that, so I'm kind of imagining that sort of thing where there's like a few sort of derelict kind of watchtowers and things, but like one or two of them are still manned by like there's like two blokes and a new recruit, which is like there. Maybe Storm's Way has like 10-12 people. It's a little bit bigger, but it's still pretty much defunct. But there is the main kind of there is a fully operating fort at Stormhaven, it being the biggest settlement, but. Each one of these islands maybe has like a, where they used to have like a whole sort of not regiment or whatever, but they had a decent number of people. Now it's like a couple of old boys, like a sort of home guard sort of feel.
Yeah,
to it.
yeah. It's the youngest and the oldest.
Yeah.
Like there'll be one fresh kid that's there for punishment with the old guys that have just sort of like, oh yeah, and I choose to. There might be one guy that chooses to be up there. He likes the cold or something. Like he's got all the stories.
And they're not exactly the most disciplined. Like the old boys have all got their own homebrew set up going on there and everything. So like nobody comes and checks. We're going to be making some cider while we're here. Not cider. You know what I mean? Like
it's going to be
nobody's checking on us.
Some kind of alcohol made out of something nobody would choose to drink under normal circumstances. Where it's seaweed alcohol or something.
Like nobody's checking on us for 6 weeks.
But it gets you trashed.
No one's checking on us for 6 weeks. We're going to be making our own hooch here. It's the only thing that's getting us through, sort of thing. And they're not really taking the duty seriously because most of the time it isn't to be. There's no need for it really. So
it's got that kind of. It invites the classic setup of the youngest, like when the two old guys are drunk out of their minds and falling over. The youngest sees something on the horizon and has to try and sober him up. And I can see all the potential for that kind of thing just playing out from there.
That's 100% what I was thinking. But yeah, so I like that. That's the kind of vibe. It's peaceful. It maybe didn't used to be peaceful, but as a result, it's sort of, it's got a kind of home guard sort of last place you want to be posted really kind of feel.
It's safe, but not really, because nature might claim one of your fingers on a bitterly cold night or something.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird. Don't get me wrong. We're still in like a D&D world, so there's definitely some weird stuff. And especially in this landscape, like you say, we talk for 10 minutes about weird, like inscrutable amethyst rock monsters coming out of the ocean and just marching around with seemingly no purpose. So there's definitely
Here's an idea. Sorry to interrupt. Just on the idea of Storm's Way is the most northernmost tip of this. It's possibly the least affected of all of those places. So maybe along that line, it could be a motivation to want to be posted there if you're particularly, averse to magics or have had bad experiences. Maybe you would try and head north to be like, this is the least likely place that any of that shit is going to happen.
Could be. Yeah.
It's horrible to live here, but it's away from that stuff.
It's horrible to live here, but hey, we've got a fire. Just try and stay out of the wind, and you'll be all right for your 6 week posting or a 6 month posting or whatever. Yeah.
You won't see a spirit in the fire inexplicably around here.
Everybody wants to be posted somewhere warm, like in the south of the country, watching watching the mountain pass, or a nice cushy city guard position on the lake or something way down in the south of the country. But the real thing is that if if you're getting on a bit, or you've messed up or whatever, you're likely to be posted here to this kind of rainy sort of raining 9 months of the year, 10 months of the year sort of island chain.
When it's not raining, it's frozen.
Yeah. I don't think it's maybe that bad, but you know what I mean. It's sort of it's
it's grim up north. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean that's true in every world.
Somebody from the north, I can lay claim to that.
Oh yeah, so, I was agreeing with an authentic statement from a Northman such as yourself.
Not that I sound it, and truly, I'm a southerner because I've lived here longer. But whatever,
it's fair. But okay. So I think, I don't know, what can we add to this then, other than we've already got the golems. But in terms of settlements, I feel like it's going to be a lot of little villages and things. And we've already only got the two kind of major towns named. We've got Stormhaven, Storm's Way, and even then, Storm's Way I don't think is going to be a big town. Stormhaven's going to be the sort of larger one of the two. Okay. I don't know.
So we're thinking on this other island now. We've got another dot.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
In terms of, obviously, the gems there, the ones that aren't up and walking about, have purpose because they could be imbued with power and potentially be useful as in their own right. There needs to be some means of collecting these or extracting them, or somebody's got to be there for that purpose. To that end, perhaps it wouldn't even necessarily be a town or a village in the normal sense, but it would be more like, here's an operation that's taking place that has a decent number of people, and yes, there is a settlement of sorts, but it's known to all that are there that this is a temporary operation, that we're here to collect gems, that people come and go. It's a little bit like, perhaps, I realise as I'm saying all of this is a little bit reminiscent of Riftview, where we talked about previously, and I came up with the idea of a mining town that is full of mercenary type people that are kind of coming and going, and that you can kind of lose your way in that town. Maybe this is a more legitimate operation. Maybe this is more like you can actually earn a living here, and it might be a little dangerous from time to time because those golems or whatever else, but you can make your money, go home with some gems in your pocket and sell them, and you're good.
It's sort of like a company town kind of thing.
A
little bit less
feudal corporatism.
A little bit less. I think we had this idea that Riftview was a bit more kind of not Wild West, but you know what I mean. It was like you say, people lose themselves. You know, people come and lose their livelihood there because they've been promised one thing and it's another. Whereas this one is maybe, like you say, a bit more on the up and up. But just nobody wants to come here, sort of thing. Like it's hard graft, sort of thing.
There's an inherent risk, or perhaps there's a certain amount of mystery and mystique. There'll probably be a lot of stories about this place. Yeah. For people that have never gone there, and within this day and age, they would believe what they're told a lot of the time. So if you hear some outlandish tale from an old man that seems to have survived some crazy stuff, then you're probably going to go, oh, well, I could make some money, but no.
Well, the funny thing is actually as well is that you mentioned the Riftview. Riftvew's mining thing, what would we call it? Glow Spar, I think. That was also as a result of the same attack kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just that was on the side of a mountain, like a lot closer on the mainland, a lot closer to the source.
It makes sense. I mean, it's a different type of gem perhaps that was under the ground there that was affected.
Yeah, that was, I think, Glowspar, I think I called it like a mineral ore. So maybe that we're seeing on the Amethyst Isles, like what happened to gemstones. The Riftview one is like, here's what happened when that, here's what that did to some, you know, just metal ores underground and stuff. So it's a little bit different.
And it creates this sense of like there would be trades in different materials. There has to be different types of materials. Not every magic requires the same thing. So
for sure, yeah. No, I like that then. So it's kind of like a. Are we thinking that it's still like a sort of independent thing, or is this kind of something that's been maybe this is actually being overseen by some kind of government? I don't know. I think
it makes sense. No, saying government is sort of like, I think that the royal family and the power of the land would probably have a vested interest in making sure that those crystals are going to the right places, that they hold control of, like, it's almost like they hold the bullets, as it were, that they don't want those things to necessarily get into the wrong wizard's hands, so they're going to control the trade on it.
Like, it's still available, like you can still buy them in shops and things. But maybe there's, like you say, there's just some controls on. Are we inventing
policy? Maybe I don't know. But
are we inventing a fantasy diamond cartel here? Like
after a fashion, I mean, ultimately, any control of resource gets to be that kind of thing. That is cool, really.
So, like, there's people. Oh, you know, nothing says "I love you" like an amethyst from the Amethyst Isles on a wedding ring. Get her what she really wants. But it's like all this propaganda, like I don't know.
I wasn't thinking specifically on those lines. Maybe along the lines of maybe the royal family would have a set of crown jewels that are festooned with amethysts.
Yeah, I like that.
It's very clearly that, like, here is a sign of where the family's wealth came from, or something like that.
So, like, yeah, the perfect sort of. They're like the perfect cut and everything, so it's kind of like, yeah, they're sort of kind of flaunting it, but like they're, you know, maybe it's not an everyday crown, you know, how like the Queen's got several crowns.
Yeah. This is like properly
brought out the type
they would keep. It's ceremonial. It's purely ceremonial.
Yeah, brought out for like the biggest of events is the crown that's got the amethyst thing, and we can even tie this in as like a historical thing. On my timeline, I've got it that. The the Amethyst Isles were kind of brought in to be part of Valana from 1116 age, in the current age.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it was kind of as part of that, the people of the Isles presented this set of perfect amethysts to celebrate the union,
mm-hmm.
and it's since been set into a crown, which is brought out now at the most important events or something.
Yeah. There could be a celebratory day of a remembrance of that, perhaps.
Yeah.
Something to remember the union between the royal family and the rulers of the time of the Amethyst Isles.
Yeah.
And that this has been a very prosperous union between them, and they celebrate on a regular basis on that because of that.
Yeah. Well, I've just put a year on it. I haven't put a date on it, but yeah, I like that as a thing. It's like it's become sort of an important symbol of the union between the islands and the mainland, kind of thing.
The kind of thing as well, like in terms of politicking and common people and what things are viewed as, is that maybe in its time it would be seen as what it is, as a celebration of the union between them. But over time, there could be segments of the populace that would see this day occur, potentially catch a glimpse of that ridiculously ornate crown and the excess of it, and get the wrong idea and not know their history and go, oh, look at the royal family, aren't they fancy? Don't they think they're big stuff? Where the reality is that perhaps in the royal family's view at that point, it would be like, well, this is duty, this is remembrance, this is what we must do to continue the way that we are, and they would do it on that basis. And in that respect, be blind to what the people might see. You never know where that kind of thing goes in terms of you can court a rabble with that kind of thinking.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. As the sort of diversion of thought there of like both sides maybe don't have the full picture, but who's to say?
And it's the way that a lot of history works. Ultimately, it's the way that a lot of things. When we look back on historical events of the past and recontextualize and all that kind of stuff, and it's just a fascinating thing to think on that way. The more you know, sometimes you can see general consensus and be like, okay, that's a bit questionable why everybody's getting up in arms about this or isn't reacting so strongly to that. The same has gone on throughout history and would happen in these circumstances.
I mean, it could even be a thing that maybe the sort of the use of that crown has kind of fallen out of favor to the point where now it is just like it's still used for these important like matters of ceremony and state and things, but at one time it was like, this is the primary crown, this is being used, this is worn by the king or queen at all times or whatever, and it's kind of maybe like tastes of change and it's seen as a little bit gauche kind of thing. It's like, okay,
or like the big impact's already happened.
Yeah,
it did already caught the rabble after a fashion. There was like somebody once threw a tomato or something when they were walking through the town on the celebratory day, and there was shock and awe, but at the same time the crowd did not necessarily react badly to the tomato being thrown.
Well,
that told them the lesson or something. Like they learned from that and stopped with the pageantry a little bit.
That's a possibility. I was thinking maybe though that we had our civil war that we talked about.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Maybe it was the favored crown of the the usurper king, the poisoner king guy. So after he was, killed and the throne taken by the current family, that for many years was sort of, that crown wasn't seen. They were, it was seen as like, okay, well, no, that was he people got used to seeing him with that crown on his head. We want to distance ourselves from that sort of image for a bit, so maybe something a bit more kind of understated. I think I've kind of said that the queen who took over, the one who killed him, was the younger sister of the previous. He poisoned the king and his wife and took the crown. And then he was killed by the younger sister of the previous king's wife, the one he'd poisoned.
Yeah,
and she took the throne. So maybe I've had it in my head that she was a bit more of it. She was like a kind of warrior, so a bit more kind of practical, maybe. So she didn't need this flashy sort of covered in the most valuable gems kind of thing. Hers went for like a more understated thing, and then that became the tradition of like, okay, right. Eventually, it started making its way back into circulation. It was definitely, kept in the vaults or whatever. And then somebody started the tradition again of like, well, no, we'll wear this during, royal weddings or coronations or ascension of the new head of the Arcanium or something. It was brought out for big events, and but only after quite some time had passed, when the memory maybe had faded a little bit of like, oh no, this was that king's main crown or something.
Yeah, a couple of generations, so that nobody would immediately look at it and go, I remember.
Yeah. That's. I mean, there's so much you can do with that kind of like
100%.
I don't know what kind of storytelling you'd even call that, but like subtle sort of.
It's social storytelling after a fashion. It's sort of the politics of humanity, the way that we observe concepts and the behaviour of others. Ultimately, I mean, in the broader strokes, that's everything that everybody's doing all the time, really. But
yeah. Okay, I like that as a thing then. So that sort of adds a little thing. I mean, okay, so we're kind of thinking then to circle back that extra dot that I've got on the map at the moment is going to be this sort of the source, the main mine, the most organised mine maybe for amethysts. Because I imagine they're cropping up all over the place, really.
I'm trying to think of a good name for it, potentially. There could be...
Sparkleberg.
Because then it gives that sense of like a permanent. It feels like it would need like a royal name. It's the royal something, the royal gem
manufacturer. Yeah.
We'll
have a think on it.
So calling it a mine directly just feels a bit simple. It feels like it needs to have some kind of like fancy name for fancy magic jewels.
Well, I feel like maybe you're saying not permanent. I don't think. I think it has probably been there for quite a while, but
suppose. But then maybe it would have to be though that like you can only mine certain locations for so long, unless we're going to say that there's like a quarry-sized deposit of just like a huge. You know how you get like a geode? It'd almost be like an enormous quarry-sized geode that you're just looking into, like.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, that makes more sense then. So, but then maybe this one has been here for quite a few years. But
they could last for a few years.
Yeah. So
it's almost like my mind goes to like the logging operations of kind of, I suppose now, but of the past in particular. You've played Red Dead Redemption 2, and this is perhaps a bit of a weird reference, but have you done the logging mission where you happen upon a group of people that are cutting down trees, and when you first meet them, they're in a heavily wooded area that's full of animals and plant life, and there's only a very small number of them, and they are building like an outpost the first time you meet them?
I think, I've met that. I haven't got, on my last playthrough, I didn't progress that very far. I did the usual thing of like, I'll start a playthrough, I'll play for 5-10 hours and then distracted by another game. But yes, I know what you mean. Yeah.
The way it plays out though is that as you keep coming back, like do a few missions, come back, talk them again, each time you come back, the camp grows and grows and grows and gets to like an exponential point where there are a lot of men there and the trees have clearly come down. Like there's one moment where you leave and come back and the number of trees that have been felled has just massively changed. It's not a woodland anymore. There's just stumps everywhere. There's no plant life. All of the animals have buggered off. And the very last part of it is this cabin that they've built that was basically the headquarters of this whole operation is the only thing that's left. And the last person there is the foreman that you meet one more time and you basically say, oh, hey, what's happening? This was so busy. And he goes, oh, we're done. We've moved on. We've built another thing elsewhere. I'll be building another cabin, and basically gives you a brief gist of like, this is the way that operates. And that I could see it kind of working a bit like that, where you would have people scouting for the next location. You'd have degrees of like build up in each of these places, that you've got the people that are out there first starting to build a little bit of infrastructure so that they can then move on to it. And then you might have the ruins of the previous places kind of trailing behind them.
Yeah, that works. I like it as a sort of concept of like, as well, that maybe there's this disconnect on the islands as a whole, because maybe majority of people who live here are, it's sort of fishing communities, really, and just kind of island people. There's people with some, sheep herders and things like that. It's island communities, and then there's the sort of split between the locals who live like that and the miners who maybe, like you say, are a bit more of a transient population who are coming in from elsewhere. Or the kind of the experts who are coming in to make their fortune a bit in these sort of, like you say, temporary kind of mine setups, and the turnover might be quite high. You know, people coming in, they're getting what they need, they're getting paid, and they're going. Sort of set against the backdrop of like people whose families have lived here for hundreds of years, farming sheep on the same little patch, you know, sort of thing. So it's sort of a bit of a disconnect.
The variety of miners, the variety of accents, the variety of different races, the just all of that might be a bit much for some of the locals. That like there could be a bit of, as I say, disconnect there.
Well, also the other thing of like, no, they've seen it all before, so they know those miners we don't.
Yeah, it's boring potentially. Yeah, it's.
We've seen
for some of them it would be that. For some of it would be. I mean, you might get the curious kid that would sneak into the mining camp, that kind of thing. There's all of that, I suppose. Yeah. Like
a kind of thing of like, oh, we've seen plenty of faces here come and go looking to make their fortune. Better off settling down like we do and fishing, you know.
Yeah, once every other generation you might get the forbidden love between like the random miner and the girl in the village kind of thing. Like,
just my mind immediately went to like a West Side Story like musical thing. Bunch of people clicking at each other. Okay, well, let's give a final overview then, because we're just past the hour mark. So yeah, it's a slightly less populated area of the country, mainly due to the sort of slightly harder sort of there's the barrier of needing to get on a boat to get there, sort of thing. It's a sort of slightly odd kind of vibe where the whole landscape is a bit sort of infused with this kind of low level kind of magical flow that sort of crops up occasionally, but really doesn't affect people's lives too much. So it's a thing that maybe you just, if you're used to it being on how it is on the mainland, you step off the boat and you're like, God, this place is giving off a weird. This feels odd, you know.
Get some vibes.
Yeah, get some odd vibes. I'm trying not to use the word vibe so much because
I'm allowed to.
Yeah. But in general, yeah, people there, I guess, not like unfriendly, but they're sort of used to how their like way of life. They're not used to these mainlanders, really, other than the miners, and they don't really associate too much, really. But I don't know. I think this sort of having this sort of slightly, it's part of the country, but it's a sort of there's the disconnect there, kind of thing. I kind of like it as a concept.
Yeah, no, I'm into it. I think we've come up with some decent stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, yeah, I think that's kind of fun. I think that's probably a good place to sort of leave it on that one then. Like I say, I'm going to go and adjust my map a little bit because just looking at the size of like the shape of things on here, I think I can tweak things to make it look a little bit more. I mean, we've said it's not naturally formed, but like, I think I can make it look better. Just some of the outlines of those little islands around the bottom, I can see exactly where I use the Photoshop eraser tool to make those.
You've got a stronger eye for it than I have. Yeah. I have faith that you will make an improvement because it already looks good. So yeah.
Well, especially mainly that one on the bottom left. Yeah, it's a bit weird. Anyway.
It's all good to me.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we'll leave it there then. Have you got anything to plug at all?
I've been doing a variety of things lately. We're still doing Jackbox on Saturday evenings. I usually preface that with an hour or two, or maybe 2 to 3 hours sometimes, of Clone Hero, which I've played excessively recently. We'll see how much that goes on. And Disco Elysium's on Wednesdays. That's usually from 7 p.m. And all the Clone Hero and Jackbox stuff is from 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. on a Saturday, 6 p.m. for the Jackbox stuff.
This is all on your Twitch at
all on Twitch, yes.
Eden. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Your turn to correct somebody's promo.
Yeah. This is the pecking order. Nikolai corrects me, I correct you. Anyway, well, you can always find links to that. I try and retweet it if I can when you're going live with the podcast
Indeed,
account.
likewise,
but I'm often at work sometimes when you're doing things. So I think probably the best place to keep up to date on links is if everybody joins our Discord server. I feel like there's been a balance shift recently where people have joined from watching you play Clone Hero, and there's less podcast people on there.
Well, hopefully we can parlay that. I'm trying.
It's all good. The more people to talk to, the better, really. But yeah, if everybody, the best way to keep up to date, actually, probably with anything to do with the podcast, is to join us on Twitter, and our Discord is probably the two main ones, really, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
But yes, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, as always, at Pretend with Dice. The link to our Discord server is actually in our Twitter bio. There's a permanent invite link there in our Twitter bio. Or if you don't really use Twitter, you can find it also on, I think it's the contact page of our Podbean site, pretendingwithdice.podbean.com. That's pretty much it, really, I think. Oh, there's one thing I need to say as well, is that we have our 4th anniversary Q&A coming up very soon. I think when this goes live, this will be this week, people have just over a week left to send us in questions for that. I don't think we've... Because we haven't really put out anything for the last couple of weeks. I haven't had a chance to, on an episode, announce that. I've tweeted about it and things, but yeah. So if you want to ask us a question for us to answer on our 4th anniversary Q&A, which actually is going to be the next episode, I think, in 2 weeks' time, you're going to need to send them to us by Friday the... When did I say? By Friday the 15th? Yeah. Yeah, send them in by next Friday the 15th of May. You can either do it by sending us a tweet, sending us a direct message on there, Facebook message, comment, or you can email us at pretendingwithdice@outlook.com. We also have a dedicated channel on our Discord server for asking questions. Yeah. I don't think there's anything else I need to plug, really, there. I think
that covers the bases.
It does, yeah. Cool. Okay, well, we'll speak to you all in 2 weeks' time for our 4th anniversary Q&A episode. I can't believe it's been 4 years. That's gone real quick.
Yeah. It does feel like a heartbeat.
I feel like this last year doesn't count, though, because of COVID.
Well, COVID time warp is real.
To the point where I got an episode list document that I keep track of numbers and things. This whole area has been labeled on my personal list as the lockdown bonus zone, because it's been a long string of bonus episodes. But yeah. Anyway, we'll speak to you all later. Have a good week.
Bye.